My name is Mike Summers, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I decided to hike in the winter to train for a longer hike that I'm planning that involves hiking through 2 winters. So I'm planning a hike that connects all the national scenic trails by foot. It starts in Florida and it ends in Washington. And by the time I'm done, I will have touched all 11 national scenic trails, and I will have thru-hiked 9 of them. I got started in hiking because I wanted to adventure. I was a free man at the time. I had no obligations, and I decided to do something that I thought would be adventurous and kind of out there. So I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. I decided to hike it, but then I realized it would be a bad idea to go my first backpacking trip to be 6 months long. So I decided not to hike the Appalachian Trail, and I ended up moving to Oregon, where my first backpacking trip ended up being in the Columbia River Gorge. I've always been an explorer, and I think hiking was just an extension of that exploration. And I think it was just taking that exploration and pushing it into a more extreme environment. And once I started to go out into nature and explore there, I discovered how amazing it is and how much there is to be experienced out there. Some of the most amazing things I've encountered, like right off the bat in the Columbia River Gorge, the views are just outstanding. It is awesome. You look out and you can see real mountains, you can see hills forever. You can look back and see where you just hiked from 3 days ago and I just followed that entire ridge line all the way to where I am now. And then you can see where you could go for another week. You can just see all the mountains. And it's really amazing. And after, I was born in North Carolina, I lived in the Midwest. And so after having lived in the Midwest for so long, being out in this topographic relief was just impressive. And it was a relief. I don't know, it was comforting to see hills and mountains, and it was exciting because there were places to go and there were things to do. So other trails that I've hiked include the Pacific Northwest Trail. I hiked in 2014, and that was my first really long trail. Mm-hmm. And I've also hiked the River to River Trail in southern Illinois. I did a yo-yo of that. And I hiked the Superior Hiking Trail in Minnesota. I can't remember what the place was called, but there was this one rock where you go sit on the rock and you're overlooking an entire forest and you can see the lake, and it was just a perfect spot to hang out and take a break. I tried some gear, and it was very, just sitting there, you could hear the wind going through the trees, and that's it. And that was so peaceful. Just that sound. And it would ebb and it would die out and it would come back, and you could just hear all the rustling. And I started hiking the Ice Age Trail December 22nd, 2016. I intended to start December 21st, but nevertheless, I ended up starting on the 22nd, which I think worked out better for me somehow. And currently, it is January 12th, 2017, and I'm just north of Cross Plains. I've hiked almost 400 miles. So the most surprising thing has been the people I've encountered and the things that have happened that you can't plan that just end up happening. And they happen all the time, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. One of the first stories was Christmas Day in Mishkat. I walk into the town, and there's 2 bars that are open, which is already awesome. Because it's Christmas, and I figure everything's probably closed. But there's 2 bars open, and so I'm like, which one do I go to? Because they both look pretty good. And so there's a lady walking down the street, and I figure I'll ask her. But she tells me that she doesn't go to those places, and she doesn't know which one's better. And so, but she's like, I've been in that one, I think. And so I'm like, whatever, that's a good enough reason to go to that one. So I walk into that bar, and as soon as I walk in the door, everybody looks at me like I'm an alien, you know. But everyone's in a festive mood and whatever, so I go in, I set down my pack, and, you know, kind of like delayer and go over to the bar to get a beer, because that sounds so good at the time. You know, I'm like just a few days in, but that was awesome. And they have Spotted Cow, which is New Glarus, and I love that beer. I've known about that beer for so long because I used to tour around the Midwest, and it's always been one of my favorites. So to see it, I was like, I'll have a New Glarus, please. And he gives me the beer, and I go to like pay, and he kind of waves me off. And so I figure, okay, I guess he's starting a tab or something. I don't know. So I take my beer, I go outside, and I call up my family and talk to them, and kind of check in because it's Christmas and just see how they're doing. And then a guy comes out to smoke a cigarette, and I finish up my call, and we start talking. And eventually he tells me that the bar is closing in like a week or 2, and there was like some kind of fund that they had, and they're using it all today, and all the drinks are free for everybody, and all the food is free for everybody. And I was like, what? You kidding me, right? Because first of all, I didn't plan on being in Michigan. I didn't plan on stopping there or being there on Christmas. And second of all, that was the bar I chose. You know?
Yeah.
And I was supposed to start a day earlier. So if I had started when I wanted, I would have already been through there. You know? So the fact that I landed there on that day was mind-blowing. And so I had a great time, and I like played pool with people, you know, had more beers, you know, ate food, and then I walked down the street to a hotel I reserved and chilled out.
Okay.
So that's just one time.
Yeah.
But there's a million. Some of the things about the trail that kind of stood out is just the unexpected beauty of the trail. You know, it's the Midwest, right? There's no mountains. So I figured, you know, what exactly is going to be so beautiful? But places like Point Beach, you know, I was just walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden there's a sand dune, and I walk over the sand dune, and there's the lake. And there's waves lapping up on the shore, and there's the beautiful sunset is making the sky turn all kinds of crazy colors, and it was just amazing. And I was like, wow, this is beautiful. I did not expect that, you know. And then even walking along the roads, that has a certain beauty to it, because the skies are so expansive and the clouds are so unique, and sometimes they're really wispy and the sun hits them right and it gives them this kind of glow, and the fields are covered in like a layer of snow that kind of reflects as well. And so I don't know, sometimes it's just really amazing. And then just the sunsets in general are pretty amazing, consistently on the Ice Age Trail. There's a little town outside of Janesville called Milton.
Yeah.
And it's a historical town. And so walking through that town and seeing a lot of the historic buildings and kind of imagining what it was like, 100 or more years ago when it was getting settled, and just looking at these places, it was really interesting. Because not only does the Ice Age Trail feature the history of the Earth, right, and the geological history, which is in itself really amazing to think about as you're hiking over moraines and next to Kettle Lakes and whatnot. But when you walk through the town, there's also that history of our culture as Americans, and kind of just seeing how Wisconsin was, it played a big part in that. And so that was really neat. And then I stayed with somebody in Albany, and he told me about these quilts that they hang on barns that aren't really quilts. They're like pieces of plywood that they paint with designs, and they all have names. And I was like, I haven't seen one of those yet, because I've been looking at the barns, because some of them are cool. Some of the barns are new and like big and nice, and some of them are like really old and they look broken down, but they might still be used. But then after he mentioned that, and I started going further north, I kept seeing them in the designs, and I was like, was I just missing all those, or were they just around here? But it's kind of cool just to, like, especially when somebody noticed, or somebody mentioned it, and they started popping out like that. It was just added another thing to see on the trail, and say, that's really neat. So, like, the things I love about the Ice Age Trail, one of them is the trail itself, because it's really well made, and it goes to really cool spots, and it's easy to follow, it's really well blazed, and sometimes it doesn't, like, seem to make a lot of sense, because it'll, like, go in a weird loop, or it'll do these weird things, but then after you hike it, you're like, okay, I see why it did that, because that was beautiful. Like the Cross Plains segment, right? It, like, goes up into the hills, and then instead of, like, just cutting back over and being done, it goes, like, back into the woods for a little while longer. Like, that was really nice today, doing that. So I'm glad it did that, even though on the map it looks kind of weird, because it's not like the shortest point from A to B. But that's not the point of the Ice Age Trail. And then the second part that I love about the Ice Age Trail is all the people that are involved with it. Like the Ice Age Trail Alliance staff. Those are really awesome people, and they're a lot of fun, and they love what they do, and they work really hard. And it's just really nice to meet them and hear their story. Like, the first time I ever got involved with the Ice Age Trail, I went to their conference, and just seeing all the volunteers and everybody and how pumped everybody is about the Ice Age Trail, it was really crazy. Because the first long trail I hiked was the Pacific Northwest Trail, and nobody knows about the Pacific Northwest Trail, because it's like brand new, and there's hardly any trail, and it's hard, it's like, well, when I hiked it, it was really hard to follow. There wasn't a lot of community support, whereas the Ice Age Trail is kind of like the exact opposite. It's all about the community. And I think the Ice Age Trail Alliance is doing some really great things. in terms of getting people involved, getting trail on the ground, acquiring land. I can only imagine how difficult it is acquiring the land around here, since everybody owns something. It's not like the Wild West where there's just larger swaths of land that are maybe owned by the government or by, I don't know. It's not like that here, so. I want to do whatever I want to do. Like I want to live my dream. Whatever I can dream up for myself, that's what I want to do. So if it's some crazy thing like hiking for 2.5 years across the United States, I want to go for it. And if it's, climbing a big rock, I'm going to go climb that big rock. And if it's, settling down and having a family and building a cabin with my bare hands, that's what I'm going to do. So I don't know. Just going to do whatever I want.